Hi everyone, hope you're doing good. Welcome back to another episode in my What If series. In this episode, we are going to be looking at what if Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul joined Megadeth in 1989. And this is the 7th episode in the series, and this one links back to the first episode in the series. That one was what if Alex Skolnick joined Megadeth in 89. But the difference between the two is that first one was like a complete pipe dream, really, more of a proper like fanfic, really. But this one actually nearly happened in real life, but because of Vinnie Paul, it didn't. So yeah, I just thought it'd be cool to kind of have a look at that and see what it could have been like if it actually happened. So yeah, before we get into the video, if you're new, please consider subscribing for more guitar and rock and metal music content. All feedback and comments are massively appreciated, and a massive thank you to those already subscribed and for your support. And now let's just get straight into this video. We're going to start how we always start, with the real timeline. So yeah, in 1989, Megadeth fired their lead guitarist and drummer, and then they appointed their drum tech at the time, Nick Menza, to fill in on the drums. And then Dave Mustaine wanted to appoint Dimebag Darrell on guitar, but Dime only came with his brother as well, Vinnie Paul. But Dave wasn't willing to do that because he already had a drummer, so the deal was off. And then after that, Pantera go on to release Cowboys from Hell and have massive success in the 90s, and then they broke up in 2001. And then Megadeth appointed Marty Friedman on guitar and then released Rust in Peace, and they went on to have their own fairly successful period in the 90s. Now we're going to go through our alternate timeline, starting in 89, when Megadeth fired their guitarist and drummer, looking for new replacements. Nick Menza would stay on as the drum tech instead of taking the position. And then Dave would call up the Abbott brothers and inquire about them joining the band, as there's 2 spots available. They would agree, and they would see it as a massive step up from Pantera. Plus, they were massive Megadeth fans at the time. 1990, they would make Rust in Peace, and I think it would sound pretty similar, pretty much the same album to Real Life, with Dimebag adding more groove elements from Cowboys from Hell compared to Marty Friedman's neoclassical style. But I don't think he'd have a massive part in the songwriting, so I don't think Cemetery Gates would appear on the album and songs like that. I think that Dave would pretty much write the majority of it. Vinnie Paul's drum performance would be fantastic. The same with Dimebag. Both their performances would be just brilliant. I think the album would be received similar to Real Life, being one of the best thrash metal albums of all time. Then in 1992, they would go on to make Countdown to Extinction. Following the success of Metallica's Black Album, I think Dave would want to go down the same route like in Real Life. But I think Dimebag would have a bit more say on the music and would push the groove metal side a little bit more with that vulgar display of power style in there. But it would be balanced out with the less thrashy sound on Dave's side. I think it would be more successful than it was in Real Life, with somewhat propelling the groove metal genre into the mainstream. Next album in 1994, they'd release Euthanasia, and this one would go more in the groove metal route, would sound pretty similar to Far Beyond Driven and Vulgar Display of Power. I don't think it would sound like the Real Life Euthanasia. There might be more Countdown to Extinction style songs and not really like Euthanasia in real life. I think it'd be a really highly received album, but I think the older fans might not like it as much. They might not like the shift in the sound, but I think at the same time they would gain a pretty big audience, a new audience with their new sound as well. 97 is when they release Cryptic Writings, and I don't think this would sound anywhere near like Cryptic Writings in real life. I think they would go down more of a groove thrash style. With Dave Mustaine putting more thrash metal stuff in. It would sound a little bit similar to Great Southern Trendkill, but a bit more thrashier. I think the fans would really enjoy this album. It probably would be more successful than Trendkill in real life, but probably not Cryptic Writings. It wouldn't have that same commercial sound. And I think at this point, the chemistry between Mustaine and Dimebag Darrell would be really, really strong. They would feel like they've made the right decision, him and Vinnie Paul. Then they would make Risk after this, and this is where I think they might start to get a little bit of a divide in the music, because I think Dave would want to push more thrash, and Dime might want to not go down that route. He might want to keep going down the groove route, sort of similar style to like Reinventing the Steel. Dave Mustaine would just want to keep going with his own ideas. I think the album would sound nothing like it would in real life. It would be, well, it wouldn't be very commercially successful at all, but I think the fans would enjoy the album. So moving on to their next album, World Needs a Hero, in 2001. I don't think this album would go very well. I think the tensions from the previous album would continue, start to get a bit worse. The recording, I don't think, would go very well. Dimebag would want to go down more the Damage Plan route, but Dave wouldn't. He would want to go more into the thrash route again. They would make a compromise and make an album that they'd both be relatively happy with, but not at the same time, if that makes sense. I don't think the album would be received very well due to the tensions and the dysfunction in the music. I don't think anybody would like it. Now for after that, in 2002, is when Dave would have his arm injury and then break up the band. Though the way the band was going, I think they would have split up anyway. I think he or Dimebag and Vinnie would have left and done their own thing. But with Dave having that arm injury, that would give Dime and Vinnie the perfect opportunity to go off and make their own band. So I think they'd go and make Damage Plan, release the debut album. And I think when Dave Mustaine fully recovers from his injury, I don't think they would return to the band. I just don't think it'd happen. And they would go on with Damage Plan, and Dave Mustaine would appoint a brand new lineup, and I think he'd go with the same lineup like he did in real life and carry on as he has done in real life. As for Damage Plan, I think they could go on to make a few more albums, because I don't think Dimebag would get shot by a crazy madman on stage like what happened in real life. So they would go on to have a pretty good music career. Vinnie would go and get the same praise as he did in real life, and I think Dimebag would undoubtedly be known as the greatest guitarist in metal of all time. Although that's still, he still is to me anyway, but yeah. Do you think this might happen? What do you think? Would Dimebag survive? Or would he get shot by a madman on stage? And what do you think their music would be like if Damage Plan carried on if Dimebag had survived. As for Pantera, however, what do you think would happen to them? Because they could go down in many different routes. I'm going to leave it open to you, to be honest. Would they go and reappoint a new guitar player, drummer, maybe somebody like Phil DeMel, Marty Friedman even, or Chris Poland? Or would they get Gene Hoglan or Paul Bospath, people like that, to replace Dime and Vinnie? What kind of musical style would they go down? Or, alternatively, would Phil Anselmo and Rex Brown just completely just drop the band and disband it and go and make Down? Yeah, as I said, I'll just leave that completely up to you. Now, just to finish off, like I always do, with a couple of final thoughts on what we've just talked about. I love Pantera and Dimebag Darrell. He is a massive influence for me. The whole band is. And as much as this idea would have been really cool to see in real life, I personally prefer what we got in real life, minus Dimebag getting shot, obviously. Instead of having like one ultimate band, we got two fantastic bands and some brilliant albums from both in the 90s, and I'm pretty happy with that. You know, Pantera's albums, Cowboys from Hell to Far Beyond Driven, even Great Southern Trendkill, they're all fantastic albums. And also Megadeth's early albums with Marty Friedman, the classic lineup. You know, them three albums, Rust in Peace to even to Euthanasia. I really like Euthanasia. I think it's so underrated. Countdown to Extinction's classic as well. I don't think those albums would have been the same without Marty Friedman adding his own special, awesome style to them. And the same goes for Pantera. Those albums that I just mentioned, that wouldn't be the same without their classic lineup. Phil on the vocals, Dime on guitar, Vinnie on drums, Rex on the bass. So, yeah, as much as it would have been interesting to see what Dave Mustaine and Dimebag Darrell's writing chemistry would have been like, it would have been really cool to see. And also, with them joining Megadeth, it might have meant Dime he might even still be here today, you don't know. As much as all that is cool, I'm still happy what we got in real life, and in a way sort of happy that Dime and Vinnie didn't join Megadeth and done their own thing with Pantera. So that was this episode. I'd love to know what you thought of this episode, whether you would have done anything different with the timeline. Would you prefer this timeline to real life? And yeah, let me know what you thought, what you would think could happen to Pantera and Damage Plan if these events did happen in real life. So yeah, that's it. Thanks ever so much for watching. Until the next time, keep it metal.